Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monticelli, the host of this podcast, Let's Talk Soul. Over the years, after having interviewed so many people on so many different topics, I realized that what interested my audience wasn't really the individual topics per se, but was how it impacted them, how it touched their soul. So I'll invite you all to lay back, put your feet up, and if you like what you hear, leave a review, 5-star review. I'd appreciate that. So just enjoy your listening. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back. This is Claudia Monticelli, the host of this podcast, Let's Talk Soul. And as you know, I have here guests that run the gamut in terms of spirituality and how it relates to the soul, this abstract concept, construct that we really don't seem to get our hands on. And today I have with me Susan Jane talking to us from Australia. Say hello to our guest, Susan.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me on the show.
Good, it's a pleasure. Well, I'm going to put you to the grind, so don't be so thankful. You might regret it at the end.
I don't think so.
Okay, so who is Susan? Susan's an award winning author. She'll talk about her book, 4 books, an intuitive coach who helps people connect to their intuition and discover their life's purpose. Now, I'll stop there just for a moment, inserting the notion of a soul's purpose, because I get that as a question, and we'll talk to the life soul. What's the difference? It's the same thing. Well, she has more than 40 years experience. She looks like a child. For those of you without the benefit of a video, she does look like a child. And she has developed a unique approach to intuition using, and this is the first time I've ever heard of this, flower readings. Flower readings as a tool for guidance. Now, her work has been recognized internationally, and she's received multiple awards for her inspirational speaking and coaching. And through her coaching and workshops, Susan empowers individuals to trust their intuition. And here, too, the notion I'll be talking and asking you about, Susan, is the difference between intuition and psychic abilities. Are they the same? Is that the gut feeling? Is that the same? Let's see. I will include in the description, of course, in this episode, a series of information, a series infos about her, pieces of information, plus her social contacts and how to get in touch with her if you would like to proceed and get coached by her. So, Susan, what's a nice girl like you doing in this field? How did you get into it? Let's start with that.
Oh, well, that happened a long, long time ago. So, just as a general way of moving into this, what started me off was I was in an emotionally abusive relationship. So I had been in this relationship for 20 years, but while I was going through it, I was trying to work out what life was about, what was going on, and all those different areas. Now, I'd experienced a few things prior to my marriage, and brushed them aside, not realizing what they were. But during my marriage is when it all sort of came to a peak. And I went, you know what? I'm not happy with how things are. I'm not happy with how things are going, with life in general. And so I had to find another way of working out who I was and what life was all about. And nowadays we have podcasts, which is fantastic. But back in the olden days,
Yeah,
we only,
the
we didn't.
radio.
Well, you had the radio, but you didn't have a lot of choice with the radio. So
Right.
I started reading books. Books was my go to.
Hmm.
This one particular time, I was dumped outside the doctor's surgery. I'd had three children in 3 years before I worked out
Mm,
what was causing
my
it.
God, a survivor.
A slow learner, it's called. So I had three children in 3 years, and I'm in an emotionally abusive relationship to an alcoholic husband. So I was going through all these things happening, and everybody was diagnosing me as postnatal depression. You must have, three kids in 3 years, you must have postnatal depression.
Right.
And not knowing really what was going on, I knew I was emotional, I knew I was upset, but I didn't quite realize why. But I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. And so I was very unceremoniously dumped outside a doctor's surgery and told to get something for it because there was something wrong with me. So I was so lucky. Synchronicity, everything else comes into line. I had a new doctor had just arrived at the surgery. She was new to the town. She practiced alternate therapies,
Hmm.
and basically that was the only one available. And I went in after a little wait, and she sort of said, "Well, what's wrong with you?" And I just broke down in tears because I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And anyway, she's writing this little notes down and everything else as I'm talking and crying and crying and talking and then doing a little bit more crying, a little bit more talking. And in the end, she held up two pieces of paper. One was for a script, and one was some notes that she had written down.
Now, wait
It
a
was,
minute. When you say one was a script, what do you mean by that?
a prescription for Valium,
Ah,
which is your drug
prescription.
of choice
Mhm.
in those
Yeah.
days. Yeah, prescription, sorry, script.
Hmm.
And the other one was actually a list of books.
Okay. Good for
And
her.
that's what started me. I knew I had three kids under the age of three. I lived in a town, a seaside village that was like an hour's drive from the closest town, and I had no family around. So
Hmm.
I needed to have something that was simple for me to get through this. So I grabbed the list of books and I
Hmm.
walked out. I did not want to go into any medication. I did not want to be involved in anything like that. I grabbed the list of books. The husband was disgusted because that's what I had and not medication. And that was my start. From there,
Okay.
I read.
Can I ask you, Susan, what was on that list? Do you remember the
Well, the very
names?
first book I got, the very first, I
Hmm.
can't remember all, that there were six. The very first one I got was Creative Visualization by Jacques Deguan.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah.
That's
That's
my
a
first.
great start,
Oh,
actually.
absolutely. And I've not stopped since then. So,
Hmm.
and one of the things I always say to anybody that's listening to me is never ever take one book, one podcast, one radio station, one anything. Never take one and live by
One
that.
husband.
I never thought
Sorry,
of that. I
gang.
like
Sorry,
that.
guys out there listening.
But
Yeah.
never be settled for one. Always take and absorb what you need and get what you need out of it. And see if that sits well with you. I'm a real theory tester. So when you were saying what you're saying in the beginning, Claudia, I am with you all the way. If it
Mhm.
doesn't work for me, it's not that it's not any good. It's just
Yeah.
no good for me.
Okay, so now I get a partial answer to my curiosity concerning flower readings. How did you get into flower readings?
Flower readings, oh wow. There's a big gap in between, and the
Of
big
course. Okay.
yeah,
Okay, I
the
will be
big gap
quiet and
in
be
between is
patient. There
intuition.
were no more children, right?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. Listen, oh my
Okay.
God.
All right. Bring on the story.
Look, it was all the book reading and everything else. And as I said to you, I'm a theory tester, so I needed to test these theories.
Hmm.
And as I'm reading a lot of these different books, it's getting an understanding of it and seeing if they sit right with you. And there was a few books that I read that I really started to question. And one of them was about we have the physical body and we have the spiritual body.
Okay.
And it was when I started reading, and I think it was Wayne Dyer that I first started reading that with. But when I first started reading that, I started to reflect back on my life. And when I
Yeah.
was 19, I was 2 states away on holidays with
Did
a
you say, excuse me, Susan, 19?
19, yeah.
You had three children before the age of 19?
No, no, no. This is while I'm reading the books. I was
Oh, okay.
reflecting
Okay.
back.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I did my theory testing. I
Mm-hmm.
reflected back. After reading this particular book, I reflected back on my life. And at 19, I had a very horrendous experience. So I was pack raped when I was 19. And it was when I was on holiday, so I didn't know where I was or what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But during this situation, I left my body, and this is what I was trying to get an
Okay.
understanding of.
So an out of body
Experience.
experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had that, and it was during this experience that I realised that, and I refer to her as the body, or she, or the body, because when I
Mm-hmm.
was looking at her, there's no emotional connection,
Uh-huh.
attachment between the physical and the spiritual, none at all. And that's what's really quite surprising, because you're looking
That's
at
interesting.
something happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're watching this for happening to a body that you know, but there's no
Yeah.
attachment to
Okay.
it. There's
I
just,
will insert myself here.
yeah,
Why is there no emotional connection? Well, souls incarnate to have emotional experiences. When there's an out of body experience, there are no emotions.
that's
And
right.
when I read for people who are interested in getting in contact with their loved ones who have passed, they don't have at that time still the emotional connection. And many
Yes,
people don't understand that. Go ahead.
yes. So yeah, so I'm glad you're with me there. So yeah, that was one of the things that I found really interesting. And then I had almost 12 months to the day of the attack. I had a near death experience, so another out of body experience.
Okay.
And then for the third time, which happened probably 10, 15 years later, I did it deliberately. I'm a theory tester, read a book about astral
You
traveling.
took psychedelics.
No, I didn't.
How did you do it deliberately?
I just practiced. Every night I'd go to bed and I just practice. I wanted it to happen, so I practiced. And of course,
A
as
form
soon
of
as it happened,
meditation?
similar, yeah. It was more of an intention, I would say, Claudia,
Okay.
more of an
Mhm,
intention, yeah.
mhm,
I intended to do it. And of course, when I did it, I was so excited. And of course, you're not meant to have emotions, straight back
mhm.
into the body. So,
Uh-huh.
but I did it. And that was why I went into the flower readings, not so much the flower readings, but because I wanted to understand how that physical body, which has the five senses,
Mhm,
can communicate with the soul or the spirit that
mhm.
doesn't.
Yes.
And
Yes. Okay,
that's
now
yeah.
let me bring you to the flowers. Do you have a flower garden? Are you especially friendly with flowers? Do you love flowers? Were you a flower in a past life? Why flowers and not paintings and art or crystals?
Oh, well, I've been there, done everything, I can assure you, as a
Okay.
theoretist.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm good,
Hmm.
I've just said I've done it. But with flowers, so what happened with the flowers? It's a tool that I use to help
Uh-huh.
people become more aware or to visually see their intuitive messages.
Okay. Now this begs a, an example. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Give me an
So,
example. Come on.
so what happens with it? So I've broken it down. So when we're sort of starting to test our intuition, when we want to trust our intuition, we've got to understand those messages that we're getting, those intuitive messages. Now, it can be really quite challenging. A lot of people will think they're thinking it, or they're not sure how they're getting these
Yeah.
messages. So I wanted to create a tool that they could actually see what their messages were.
Uh-huh.
So we see it in a logical sense, and
Yeah.
then take it further on an
Yeah.
intuitive sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so what it means is, like, one of the examples that I do is that if you were, I use flowers as goals, so they could be your goals in life. If
Okay.
you have a particular goal that you're thinking about, and say it's a relationship goal or a business
Right.
goal, money goal, whatever it is,
Right.
we have the SMART goals. You've heard of the SMART goals, where we have to look at it as timely and accessible, and all the logical side to it.
Uh-huh.
I look at our emotional goals, and if we
Okay.
say flowers are our goals in life, and you
Yeah.
think of an emotional goal, like say a business goal can have that. How do I want to feel when I'm successful? How do I want to feel
Okay.
when I feel my business is
Mm-hmm.
successful? And you're not
Okay.
putting a money terminology to it, you're putting an emotional
Right.
attachment to it.
Okay.
And then you say, okay, what does that look like in a flower?
Mm-hmm.
And then I take you kicking and screaming into the 21st century and I say to you, Google it.
Okay. And what typically comes out in this example? What kind of flower comes out?
This is where your intuition, this is where my the people that are getting a reading, this is where their intuition is choosing a flower. They're not limited to a deck of cards. They're not limited to a live flower that they can pick where you're reading the essence. They actually pick an image of a flower, so it
Okay,
doesn't
well, wait a
matter.
minute now. If I were there, I would smack you. Because it's not, you're talking about readings card. It's the exact same thing. A flower is a flower, a shoe is a shoe, a crystal is a crystal, a card is a card. They're all images. So it's not just, don't say just. We're not going to be friends anymore. You say
But I
that.
mean, that's the whole idea of it.
Right,
The whole idea of it, it's not limited. You're not limited with Google
right.
anymore. We
Okay.
don't have to be limited to what's growing locally.
Uh-huh.
Some of the Australian flowers are
Okay, now
so
wait a minute. I'm not sure if I understand, Susan.
yep.
I would like to know, by example, what that person, that fictional person, that real person, came up with. What image do they come up with using Google? For example,
I will
for that,
say, for example, they came up with they decided that they've got a relationship goal and they've chosen a red rose
for the success in business.
for a relationship,
Uh huh.
business. It doesn't have to be a particular image. It's your
Yeah.
image. You're the one who's
Yeah.
choosing it. Your intuition's picking it, not me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not picking it. You are. But
Okay.
what we
But
do
what
is
does that tell the person once they have their image? What
once
does
they've got,
it do for them?
then we do the reading. So
Okay. Now walk me through the reading. I'm
this is
in
this is
love.
the
A
formula.
successful relationship for me is visualized through a rose. I show you the rose and you give me a reading. So
Yes.
go on. I'm listening like a
Okay.
dog. I'm waiting.
So the first thing we look at is whether the image that you choose, there's 16 elements we can look at to start with. But the first thing I look at is have you chosen a portrait image or a landscape image?
Okay.
Because that's about your motivation for this goal.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. So portrait is a positive motivation, individual motivation. Landscape is a negative motivation, and it's more community minded.
Mm-hmm.
So we can look at that. So if
Okay.
my business goal was landscape, I didn't want it landscape, but because I knew how the readings went, but
Mm-hmm.
it was landscape, and it was because I'm looking at a community. I want to
Right.
help a community, and in it, I want to. The negative aspect is people that have experienced, say, trauma or emotional abuse or things that I went through.
Mm-hmm.
Have an ability to step out of it. There is a way out, and most of it's about trusting your gut, trusting who you
Okay.
are.
But not necessarily negative. The
No,
uh, okay, so it's not negative, but you use the word negative as
yeah,
opposed to
it's
positive
it's the
portrait.
simplicity. Yeah, it's just the
Okay.
simplicity. People are motivated in two different ways. It's a positive. They call it positive and negative motivation. So
Okay.
if we're on one side of the fence and we want to get over to the other side, we could go, I want to get over there to see what's on the other side. That's a positive. But the other
Hmm.
thing is the area here that I'm living in is not very happy. I'm not very happy where I am. So I'm going to see what the other side looks like. So
Okay.
there's that's sort of a negative motivation, even though it's not a bad negative. It's just
It's not negative in the literal
yes,
sense of the term.
yes,
I see. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And
Now,
let's face it, often we have to have something go wrong before we change.
okay, but often, but not always. Um,
Always, no,
let's let's play a game. Okay.
yeah.
Um, you are speaking from the top of your experience, from the middle of your experience. I mean, you're going to live a long life. All right. So what is the youngest person who has ever come to you for coaching?
For coaching, oh, I've been coaching for such a long time. I would have to say around 24, 25.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Do
around
you
there. I
vaguely
think people are a
remember
bit old.
why?
Sorry?
Do you vaguely remember why they came at that young age?
At that majority of times, it's more about interest. They want to know what's going to happen, where they want to go. They're just a lot of times they're stumbling. They're
Okay.
not quite sure where they're going or what their
Okay.
directions are. Yeah,
So they're looking for a type of guidance similar to a tarot reading, a flower reading, so they can see what today looks like and what elements they can manipulate to change their future if they want to. I'm talking about a reading in general. That
yeah.
person comes to you for a one-off reading or and the beginning of a series of reading. How does that work usually?
Most of the time, it's a one-off. But what I have been doing lately is I don't know if you know. Have you heard of the paint and sip
No,
workshops that I do?
no,
So
no.
paint and sip is where you learn to do art. You have a little glass of wine or something, but you
Uh-huh.
learn to paint art. So it's like an art class, and
Okay.
I've been doing those with flowers. So
Okay.
they're actually painting their flower, and
Uh-huh.
instead of just
Okay.
walking away with a painted flower, they then
Yeah.
do a reading on it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we go through the flower. The stem is the path or the journey to get the goals. The leaves are
Uh-huh.
their guides. We look at
Okay.
shapes. The shapes are your behaviors. Are they masculine behaviors? Are they feminine behaviors? If it's a
Okay.
business goal, the petals are your marketing. What sort of marketing are you doing? What does that look like? Where does that go? If it's a
Okay.
relationship goal, that's the petals of attraction. So anything to do with the
Okay.
attraction side of it. Um,
Uh-huh.
so there's you go through. It's a tool to help people. I don't want to just be a flower. I don't want to be a flower reader. I want to be a
Okay.
flower teacher. That's what I
Well,
want to
well,
teach.
I'm currently at your website and I do see a tab called courses. So I'm looking, they're online courses and programs. And so they offer a series of different topics, tools to develop your intuition, making real energy connections, flourishing intuitively course, creating happiness course, reclaim your, and so on. Okay. So these are, say, things that people can go to the page they can go to, pick and choose and purchase. And when they purchase, what will they find there? Videos, audios? What will they find?
Videos, PDF downloads. They connect up with me on social media, different
Uh
things
huh.
like that. Yeah, yeah, so they've got all that in there. I think so. When they're buying a course, say the flower reading, the bigger
Yeah.
flower reading courses,
Yeah.
I go through every single element. So you're looking at all the elements that you get an understanding of, and again, we're looking at it as a visual,
Yeah.
and you're looking at it quite analytically, but you
Yeah.
allow that intuition, those intuitive messages to come
Yeah.
through. So the whole idea of it is
Yeah.
not to have things the same, is to always have those different things happening.
I
So you
see.
learn to trust your gut.
Okay. Okay. Now, not once during the course of our communication did I hear you utter the word psychic. So uh, I understand by that you don't define yourself a psychic, and that doesn't factor in to the work that you do. Is this correct?
Whether it factors in or not, I just choose not to go by that terminology. That's all. I
Why is
just,
that?
it. I want people to. Okay, this is just my personal
Sure, sure,
opinion.
sure, sure. Everyone's
Yeah,
different, of
yeah.
course.
So when I sort of talk about psychic, I always refer to a psychic as, oh, I go to a psychic and I can get a reading.
Yeah.
I don't want people to come to me for a reading. I don't really want that to happen. I use the flower readings as a tool so they can see their intuitive messages. I
Okay.
want them to be empowered. I don't want me to be the one they're coming to. I want to encourage them to
Mm-hmm.
trust themselves. That's
Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to change topic,
yeah.
and I want you to tell me about your book or books.
Oh, the book is Intuitive Flowers. So
Intuitive Flowers. When did it come out?
2000. I finished university in 2012, and I wrote it in 2013.
2013. Good. It's available. If we look for
So
Susan
far,
James, yeah,
yeah.
Susan
Intuitive
James.
Flowers, empowering your emotional goals. So it's
That's the
about,
subtitle.
yeah, it's about your emotional goals. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
one of the things I do tend to refer back to,
Mm-hmm.
so I call myself an intuitist. So the mentalist deals with thoughts and thinking, whereas an
Mm-hmm.
intuitist deals with feelings and impressions. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the big things that I talk about is that emotions are energy emotions. It's something we express externally.
Mm-hmm.
Feelings are what we feel internally. And
Mm-hmm.
we can be feeling depressed, but express it with anger. We could
Yeah.
be feeling happy, but
Mm-hmm.
hold on to it and not express it in the same way. So
Right.
how we are feeling, which is more about the spirit side of us, can be very different to how we're expressing it, our emotions.
Right. Good. Are you do you have plans to write another book?
I actually do.
Yeah, okay.
I've got
When
three
is
on
it
the
due?
go.
When is it due?
Oh, look, I wanted to have it finished this year, but it might not be until the year after. So
Okay.
one's about learning to trust your intuition, and going through my life and how I've experienced that in a learning term. But I
Mm-hmm.
also want to do, so intuitive connections is about our chakras, how we connect through our chakras.
Okay. Okay.
And intuitive trees I'm going to look at that as our wealth aspect, our attitude to wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at intuitive pets, which are about our connections in life, our
Mm-hmm.
relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've got all these little areas, and
Okay.
principles are all the similar. It's seeing a picture, looking at it in an analytical way, but
Yeah.
allowing those intuitive messages to come through. So you start trusting yourself.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Thank you so much, Susan, for taking the time to come on. And hopefully, when you get the second book out, contact me. Maybe we could have you on again and we'll do part two.
That
Okay.
sounds great.
Take care of yourself. Bye bye, Susan.
Bye bye. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome.